Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, a Pittsburgh Steelers podcast made by fans like you, for fans like you. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. Yes, I'm laughing and I'm smiling over here. My name is Joe Kuzma because I tried to do a different intro because we are here, well, we being my co-pilot, Terry Bradshaw Fletcher, for the WTF edition or weekly edition, whatever you want to call it. You know what? This thing is so unscripted and off the rails, and I'm just going to record it as is. Terry, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Coming in from California.
As always, you are like Steelers Nation West Coast over there, and I don't know, it's been cold here, very cold here, and you're taunting me and telling me how you go to the beach to get some drinks and have some drinks at like 10 at night. You can't even go outside at 10 o'clock at night around 8. In fact, it's dark like at 5:30. So,
well, they did give us a blanket, so I mean, you know, but we're in the mid 70s today. We had a good day today. So.
Oh, that sounds like turtleneck weather. You have like your ski jacket or whatever.
What's that again?
Your ski coat. You probably don't even know what that is. You're in California.
I don't know.
It's what you wear when you go skiing because it's cold and there's snow and stuff.
Okay.
Like a snow coat or winter tires. It's almost like Yinzer speak to you.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. All right, so let's get into this.
You're working on your tan, and we're just trying to cover everything, including our eyeballs, to stay warm here. So, yeah, you know what? Let's see. Where are we going to start? We want to talk about the Steelers and Ravens on Christmas. That was a WTF already from the other day, or from the last week when we ran the show. And Commissioner Goodell has us playing on another holiday, so hopefully we're not all too hungover from New Year's Eve, and we all show up at 1 o'clock on Sunday for New Year's Day game with the Steelers and the now 1-14 Cleveland Browns. Hey, this wasn't on the agenda, but WTF San Diego Chargers.
Yeah.
Seriously. I think I mentioned this with Brian, and I said somebody I think it was like NFL memes or one of these joke parody sites said that they're investigating kicking them out of the league. But if anything, that's going to kick them out of San Diego, I think. So. Yeah,
I think San Diego is embarrassed mainly by who they lost to, not their record. So.
Yeah, now the Browns think that, Joe Thomas said it was like their Super Bowl, and it's like, well, when you taste victory once every 365 days, I guess. So.
Well, I think Brian Billick, Coach Billick, he put it the best. He was on NFL Network, and he said the biggest thing that win does for them, which I guess I could see it, is the fact that in the off season now, it's not going to be a discussion of when will they win a game, will they ever win a game. It's been 500 years since they've won a game. Now it's just, can we at least, get back to winning more than one game? So he said it's not that big of a question anymore, and I can see that. So,
and ironically, once in every 500 years is about how many times RG3 stays healthy. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, but seriously, if they win in Sunday and they play against what's going to look like the Steelers backups and then lose to the backups, and they hadn't won a game in over a year, and then they're going to go and take a layoff for 6 months back in, what is it, September's like 9 months until they get to play a regular season football game again. It just adds to that countdown clock. But speaking of kicking people out of the league and just kicking in general, we were talking, you have the article, which when our listeners are listening, this will now be up. So there's some paraphrasing here on the podcast version of this. So there's stuff to read that you won't hear here, and vice versa. If you read, you're going to hear some stuff here that you won't necessarily see on the website. So Chris Boswell, the first WTF right out the gate, kicking it out of bounds to start the Steelers-Ravens game for all the marbles.
Yeah, just when you see that, you're like, no, and then all of a sudden you're like, and they will start at the 40. It's just like opening with an interception. You're just like, what the heck? So, yeah, and especially when everybody's saying, okay, let's just start with no mistakes, and then you get a mistake out the gate. So.
Yeah, and it's so rough, and I talk about this all the time. It's practically every week I do the film room with the special teams version of that on steelcityunderground.com, and I'm always talking about the sky kick and the technique of a lot of coaches aren't happy that they moved the touchback on kickoffs from the 20 to the 25. That doesn't count for punts, so it hasn't changed the punting game whatsoever. But it has with all the analytics and sports statistics and all these numbers and math. You know, the stuff that Eric, that nerd that we know that hangs around on our website,
right?
That's the stuff that he's into. For those who don't know, I'm talking about Eric Herman. I'm going to find a way. There was like a good 6 months where I think me and Eric always found a way to mention Brandon Boykin. I'm going to start just mentioning Eric every time I have a podcast. So
that's funny.
But starting a half off the wrong foot. So you start on it's a 15-yard penalty. They kick it out, and then they get to start on the 40, and it happened twice, and that's a WTF. What the fire truck? And then you just mentioned the interception there. That's exactly how they started the second half. Was very first play, Ben throws the ball away.
Yeah, it's just you just sit there and. I mean, talk about trying to give the game to them. I mean, and actually, and I'm not a Joe Flacco fan at all. He had a clean game. The last interception, obviously they're trying to do some panic things because they only got, a couple seconds left. But I'm just saying that, he had a decent game. Ben had a terrible first three quarters. And then obviously in the last quarter, that was what he needed to do. He stepped up to the point that, we won the game. But when we talk about the kickers, it's not then that moving that, that back a little bit. Or up, I should say. One thing that they also have to realize, and they talked about it in Tomlin Tuesday, is that the guys returning it have to recognize when to take a knee back there and take it at the 25 or when to bring it out. And Fitz isn't making good decisions. So, he's not gaining more. He's not getting to the 25 when he brings it out. What is he getting? I think I saw your averages when you were looking at that. Was it 21 or something?
He got to maybe the 20, and I have it here. I think he got to or he brought it out 20 yards. Let me find it. Here we go. We called it Fitzmas.
Yeah.
He got to the 17. So he returned at 20 and got to 17. That's right. He started from the minus 3 yard line. So he's 3 yards deep in the end zone already, a third of the way in. And yeah, you're right. These guys, especially, it's not like Fitzgerald Toussaint is like a speed demon compared to some of these DBs
exactly.
or corners that are returning kicks in the NFL. So, it's like right there when you're starting on the 17, you're essentially penalizing your offense 8 yards right out the start where they could start from the 25.
Yeah, when Tomlin was talking at his presser, somebody asked him this question too, and he said something to the effect that, well, it depends on trajectory, how high it's kicked, how low it's kicked, how, line drive it's kicked. And I was like, you know what? Somebody just needs to say, Coach, how far back are they in the end zone when they catch it? If they're not at the lines, take a knee. Come on. So unless it's Cleveland, maybe then that's okay. But I mean, everybody else, you need to realize you want it at the 25. That's a great place to start. So.
And I believe they got like one of these right on Sunday, but it's a WTF type thing. So just field position in general is where all of this Chris Boswell, Fitzgerald Toussaint, we said good Ben and bad Ben. All of it was field position was a WTF. Boz kicked it out twice out of bounds where the Ravens got the ball on their own 40. Luckily, that didn't do any damage. You even hear, and let me tell you, here's a WTF that wasn't necessarily put on the agenda too. Doug Flutie as a color commentator.
Yeah.
He
was funny.
He's terrible.
Yeah.
Mike Tirico is a great play-by-play guy, blow-by-blow, one of the best in the business. He's usually doing it with somebody like John Gruden. They pair him in a three-man booth, which makes any job difficult, and that's probably because they realized that Flutie, they added Tony Dungy like in the middle of the week. Tony Dungy will be on this now, and I like Coach Dungy, and of course he's a former Steeler too, so how can you not like him? But Doug Flutie was just kind of like, I wanted to fall asleep when I heard him talk.
I think the only thing he did that actually I thought was kind of funny is he did give an understanding of what play was called, and none of the other guys were doing that. They were more giving about what was happening on the field. So he's like, well, what was called there was, and most people probably missed that, but I think he was just there for comic relief. He wasn't really there for anything else. So I would have rather heard Tim Tebow back there, but you know me.
You would listen to Tim Tebow reading like an instruction manual for my washer.
Yes, I would. So let's go ahead and move on from that. I get enough grief from you guys on on our chat line. So yeah, let's get on to that.
Terry just is a big, we'll call her a Tim Tebow fan, to put it lightly. So yeah, but you know what? With the play calls, a lot of people think it's like the Sandlot. They just think. Give Todd Haley some credit. We're going to be talking about Mike Tomlin here shortly, but give Todd Haley some credit here too. This is the playbook he draws up. He gets all these guys in sync. They get guys, and the same with all these other coaches that are there, like Richard Mann, who's the wide receivers coach. They get DeMarcus Ayers to step up in this. So it's just like, WTF, man. It's not like, some people doubt Ben. Okay, he overthrew one pass to David Johnson, and then, he had a bad read. It's like players throw interceptions. It's so hard when you have somebody that's so good. But at the same time, it's like, come on, people. It's like sometimes they're getting on Ben and sometimes they're not. It's just, let it go.
Well, I think the thing with Ben that I think maybe some people are missing, and to me that's, go back and watch the games that he's doing and all the new players he has with Coates and Ayers and, Rodgers. And I mean, seriously, his one player that he's got is AB, and everybody else around him are new pieces. But he throws balls that he wants catches like AB makes, which means that AB makes Ben look good. Ben makes AB look good, but AB makes Ben look good. And that one catch that was, to me, the turning point of the game that Eli Rogers made in the middle of the field was fantastic.
Wow.
But he went up and grabbed it and just, it was a wow moment. But that's what Ben needs, because Ben knows that that's what he needs, somebody to go up and get. And I think people miss that. Listen, he needs playmakers. That's how he throws the ball. And it sounds like he's got a couple now that he's starting to feel comfortable with. So
yeah, the Rodgers catch. But speaking of catches, Antonio Brown's touchdown.
What is it? The immaculate
extension.
Extension.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what they're calling it. Just to cone the ball like that, and then to bring it over and bring it back so nobody could, bat it out of his hand. It was incredible.
We've always got so much stuff to talk about. We actually, me and Terry did put at least a bullet list together so we could try and stay on track. But another one that comes to mind is because AB reaches over the goal line here with his left hand. And Terry, of course, remembering, he's a lefty because he threw a pass, and that pass was much better than what Des Bryant threw a touchdown pass in the Dallas game. Well, Des Bryant didn't have J.J. Watt breathing down his neck. He wasn't throwing into any type of coverage. So I guess we're lucky that AB's a southpaw.
Exactly. That's the first thing I saw. I'm like, well, I'm glad he's a lefty, because the way he was turned, if he was right-handed, he wouldn't have got it in because he'd have to come across his body.
Or he would have dropped the football if he tried it, because he wouldn't have. Maybe doesn't have the same type of grip. I mean, I'm somewhat ambidextrous, but
the grip on his face mask that they didn't call, that turned his head around. I just, I've seen that replay so many times. I've actually retweeted it in different ways myself a couple of times because I love the after Ramon Foster spike. I just can't believe that the refs didn't see that. It's just, Weddle was in his face, grabbed on and turned his head. And how do you not see that?
And that's 2 weeks in a row, too.
I know.
I think it was Sean Williams from the Bengals who did it a week earlier when they were in coverage. And almost in the same thing, you have more than one player on Antonio Brown, and he reaches over. So that was the big thing. I think it's Ian Rappaport, who I feel never has a nice thing to say about the Steelers. Even when he tries to say something that's neutral, it still comes off as just grating and getting under my skin. He tweeted out like, what if he doesn't get in? And I said, well, who cares? He did get in.
He got in. Exactly.
Close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades is what they say.
Well, let's face it. You know what? It's interesting because, and I maybe I'm politically incorrect by saying this, and you can always edit me out if you want to. But at this point, Ian got famous because he said Ben wanted a trade. And that's how he got his infamous moment. And that's how he actually got on the map, because of falsehoods he said about Ben. So it's interesting that he still has a job.
Yeah, and he's never held accountable. You want to talk about politically correct or incorrect or whatever.
Exactly.
The fake news, a lot of times you have somebody like that that just kind of is like a weasel and saying some of these things. And it's like, say something nice all the time. Or say something. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. We're not talking about criticism or whatever, but this is like a legitimate, like, who cares? Because if he doesn't get in, it should have been called a face mask. The clock would have been stopped. Even if the clock runs and it's down to 0 at that point, you can't end on a penalty. We saw this happen actually twice in Cleveland. They're going to punch it in and win the game and with no time on the clock, on time down or something. That's what really should have happened. So I do hope, I don't want to talk about officials again today. In fact, if you notice that whole section, it's up on the written thing that you wrote. Great. I can't talk about it anymore. They're driving me crazy.
I know.
But if you want to talk about some last second type things that happen in these games and what ifs, what if the Seattle Seahawks don't miss a point after try? The extra point, Goodell moves this thing back last year, and now they go from probably having home field advantage in a well, maybe the 2 seed because the Cowboys already had it locked up, but they would have at least had a bye, and they lose it on count of losing the game in the final moments because all they did was tie. They missed the extra point that would have went ahead, and the Cardinals come out and Catanzaro kicks like a 43-yard field goal as time expires, and it's just like, and I'm watching that. That was Christmas Eve. That was right before the Bungles come on. So that was a serious WTF. The other WTF has to deal with injuries, Terry. This is your wheelhouse.
Well, the broken legs, I mean, talk about they come in threes. Nobody's talking about, Lockett with the Seahawks. I mean, that was gruesome. I mean, that was so graphic to see. Even as somebody in the medical field, I mean, he had it broken in 2 places, but then 2 quarterbacks go out there, Mariota and, obviously Derek Carr. He's the sweetheart of all of NFL right now. And, everybody's saying that the Raiders are now done because of that. I think they're going to have a hard time with the road to the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't be surprised if they pulled out their next win, but I'd be surprised if they got beyond that. But yeah, luckily they come in threes, but I could see why our starters are sitting this weekend.
Yeah, so, yeah, absolutely. You can't risk it. I'm going to have a Browns preview podcast here shortly. That'll be up. Anyone that's subscribed to the podcast, it'll, of course, come into your feed. So take a look for it because it's really more a preview of who are we going to sit, because I don't want to – there's like 10 guys I don't want to risk getting hurt playing the Cleveland Browns in a game that will mean nothing because the Steelers are locked in as 3. So whether they're an 11-win team and win this game or they're a 10-win team and lose this game makes no difference. They are where they are.
But Joe, you know what? You're saying it makes no difference. You want to cut some slack or at least show a little support to all those fantasy leagues out there who are losing their minds right now because they have neither Ben nor Bell nor Brown that are playing for them, and they were counting on them to win their playoff championship. So, that's why we in my league we don't play for the playoffs because you never know what's going to happen week 17. But those leagues, I hear a lot of people whining right now.
I'm done with everything but my Heads Up League with my wife. We just played each other Heads Up every single week. We have a 30-team roster. I have like 2 quarterbacks, 4 running backs, and 4 receivers, like 2 flexes, 2 tight ends, 2 kickers, 2 defenses, something like that. 30 on the roster. My husband's in
the background saying you're still married. He picked up Landry Jones this weekend. So, yeah, that would not be well for our marriage here. No.
Well, she had a pretty big lead on me. Like overall, I won I think 5 games. It's crazy how hard it is, though. It's very difficult, and I just had some guys who just totally laid an egg, like Brandon Marshall, for example. Hey, how's that bet going there, Brandon Marshall?
Yeah, exactly. That Porsche is going over to AB pretty soon.
Yeah, it's like Fitzpatrick. No, let's bring in Geno Smith. Hurt. Okay, let's bring Fitzpatrick back in. No, let's bring in Bryce Petty. Oh, now he's hurt. Yeah, there's some more WTF with injuries, and there's somebody I would like to injure, but first I want to play this call I got. It was right before Christmas. I'd wrapped up recording the podcasts before this came in, and this is probably a little more relevant before well, it's still relevant based on our next subject, so I'm going to play it here, but it would have been a little worse had things not went our way on Sunday. So this is, I think, Marlo from Ypsilanti. I love it. Let's hear what he's got to say.
My name is Marlo Gibson. I'm calling from Ypsilanti, Michigan. My question is, will they keep our coach at the end of the year? And I say they should keep him. Mr. Tomlin is doing a great job. Thank you.
Okay, Marlo, I totally agree with you on keeping them. And yeah, a lot of people actually who wanted to say that Mike Tomlin would be on any type of hot seat were absolutely out of their minds. He was still going to win 10 games this year, regardless of what happened last Sunday. You don't get rid of a guy. I've seen it happen once with the Chicago Bears, and of course they're a mindless, clueless, directionless franchise. John Fox has got them playing some inspired football with a lot of injuries, but they've been rebuilding for years and have been a doormat. Lovie Smith had them nearly in the playoffs, a 10-win team, but they didn't. All that playoff math, they didn't make it that one year, and sometimes it's just something that happens. So Steelers could have been in that same spot, a 10-win team outside of the playoffs this year. I don't know that you would fault Mike Tomlin for Le'Veon Bell being suspended 3 games and Ben Roethlisberger being hurt. He missed the one game entirely and just being banged up and not playing so well, and a few others, and et cetera, et cetera. So Mike Tomlin is not on the hot seat unless you ask Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah, that's just, you know what? Let's stop saying he's my namesake. No. I had a problem with him before when he did not attend Chuck Noll's funeral, and now I seriously have a problem with him. He's talking about, Mike Tomlin said it in his presser. I was actually surprised that he addressed the question when somebody asked him about Terry Bradshaw's comments, and he talked about Hollywood Henderson, that he was always a Dallas fan. So what does that say about me? We've got some laughs, but he basically was like, you know what, it's disrespectful. And I agree. It was a disrespectful comment, the cheerleading comment. I mean, who came out today and basically said, I think the Browns coach, Hugh Jackson said, you know what, he's a great coach, if not one of the best coaches out there. Look what he's got his team to do. He's got great acumen. You can hear it. Just his football IQ is so impressive of what he knows individually about every single player, what he knows about the other team. And then we saw something, a report on a sideline view by Chris, I think it was Chris Wolfe on the Scout Report, just really talking about how he makes sure that the judges understand what he wants to do during the game. This guy knows what he's doing. He's never had a losing season. Yes, I think that some of the criticism comes from the fact that it's been 5 years since, we've gone past the first playoff game, but he has been to the Super Bowl twice and we've won one. And I think we're headed in a really good direction, but he's a great coach and his players respect him and they all came out to have his back. So I think that says a lot about, who he is and the Steeler family versus what, old school Terry Bradshaw has to say. I mean, he wasn't a great, team guy back then. If you look back at some of the video and the tape and what people had to say. So obviously he's still in the same boat with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that Terry had respect for, and Mike Tomlin said that in his press conference. He said something to the effect of he doesn't like he has a respect for using the word great, and he won't just throw it around. But Terry, on the other hand, I don't think even understood that Chuck Noll was a great coach and didn't accept the coaching or tutelage in quite the way that other people thought that Chuck Noll, walked on water. And you watch like the Football Life edition of Chuck Noll, and Terry actually being a part of that is almost like it kind of rubs you the wrong way. And Terry's been one of these guys too that, and I think I may have mentioned this before on one of the other episodes, that he doesn't show up for functions in Pittsburgh, when they bring back former players. And I want to say he's one of the guys that didn't even show up to the Super Bowl when they had all like the MVPs come back. So he's kind of like, he just goes to the beat of his own drum. But Tomlin, in saying that, addressed the word great. Now, on the other hand, he also addressed being called a cheerleader, and that's where he said it was unprofessional, and he said, I was a cow, and he had this crafted. He knew this question was coming, and when he said he was a Cowboys fan and Hollywood Henderson, you have to realize what Hollywood Henderson once said about Terry Bradshaw. He said, Terry Bradshaw couldn't spell cat if I spotted him the C and the A.
I didn't know that. I had to ask my husband who that was because that was way before my time. So I didn't know who that was. And it was just funny because he said, he said something to the fact they still kicked their butt twice in the Super Bowl. But it was just funny because it's just unlike Tomlin to address what he calls elevator noise. He said it's just outside noise. I think he needed to say something, and how he said it was pretty amusing to me. And I think it just kind of went, you know what? He did need to say something, and finally he stood up for himself. And I think that actually got him a lot more fans, believe it or not, because people were like, okay, he didn't just say whatever. He basically said, yeah, you know what? That is disrespectful. Leave me, I'm doing a good job. Good job. He didn't think he's great. He even actually, I think, nodded to Belichick and said, well, what did he say? The guy over in New England, he's probably great because we're just working stiffs, the rest of us. There's 32 jobs, and I'm happy to have one. I'm blessed to have one, and I'm privileged to have one. And he, you know what? I think that's it. He's humble. He knows there's always work to do. You got new players. I mean, they got rookies on all over the place in the field this year. And quite honestly, traditionally, that doesn't happen. So not in Pittsburgh. And so now to see all that and see how well they've come, I mean, how far they've come this year. I wasn't too happy to have two of the rookies on there at the beginning of the season, but what would we have done without him? So I'm pretty happy with what he's done to him at this point.
Always finds a way to do it.
He does.
I've mentioned these guys they find, and this was the final drive of that game. Jesse James is a fifth-round draft choice, catches 2 passes. Antonio Brown, of course, as we all know, but we forget, he was a 6th-round draft pick.
Well, not just that, but you know what? The thing is, what has been in the media lately? Who just won MVP in the Steelers? I mean, AB, I don't want to say he's been taking a back seat to Bell, but because Ben's had some little bit of struggles with his accuracy on passing, they've really, I mean, the run game's been incredible. And so I think, AB's kind of, I guess he has been kind of the number 2. And so, as far as the go-to person, he's also double teamed and triple teamed, obviously. But for him to end the game that way and to win it that way to us, I mean, they immediately went to the face of John Harbaugh, and I was like, somebody's got a WTF moment right now. Like, did that just happen? And then they went to, I always want to call him Suggs.
Oh, so, yeah, Terrell Suggs.
He just looked at him with that little smirk on his face going, oh, man. Yeah, so it was pretty awesome just to see. Even they were like, there's nothing you can do about that, nothing.
Yeah, and you basically did get outfoxed, and a WTF with Houston, is it Kyle Juszczyk, with the really like alphabet soup name, their fullback that scores. I had the Dallas moment where I'm like, they scored early, thank you, and I think even Tunch says it on the radio broadcast and says, you know what, that's plenty of time, and we still have 2 timeouts. We have Ben. Minute 4, minute 6, whatever it was, and going back on that too, it's like these guys, these aren't all first-round draft picks. DeMarcus Ayers plays in his first game, catches his first NFL pass on that final drive. He is a 7th-round draft pick who just got activated he just got called up to the active roster. Kobe Hamilton catches a pass. He is bounced around. This is like his 4th or 5th team. Xavier Grimble is another guy on his 5th team, undrafted, bouncing around, catches the touchdown early on. They continue to find guys.
The Ayers, though, I think with Ayers, I don't think it was the pass. It was the pass interference he got. That was a key in that game.
Definitely equally big. But people will still not give Mike Tomlin his due. And in fact, and you know who I'm bringing up next, Jason Whitlock from whatever this stupid show is that's on, I think, on Fox Sports.
It's sad.
Yeah. And he talks about they ask him a list. Give me your list of coaches you would take over Tomlin. I'll wait. And he says, great. Bill Belichick. No one's going to argue that. We just heard Tomlin. We were talking about Tomlin saying the same thing. Pete Carroll. Great. Okay, he's been successful. Maybe not long enough yet, but he's had some success. Let's see how they do now that they had a really good draft or two where they got like Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman was like a 5th-round draft pick, and they get some of these guys. Now some of these guys they can't afford to keep. Let's see how this continues to go. Sean Payton, good. Maybe great. What has New Orleans done?
I know.
So, no, I'm sorry. So then he goes to the very good list. I'm not gonna mention the first name. You got Mike McCarthy with Green Bay. I would argue Mike McCarthy every bit as successful as Mike Tomlin. In fact, beat us in the Super Bowl. Let's see who else we got here. Bruce Arians. What's he doing there?
I think he's got an aging quarterback. I have a hard. I mean, to me, I don't think he's got the quarterback of what he's going to have there. So
yeah,
I think he's a good coach, but I think he needs a quarterback.
Incomplete. We'll call it an incomplete.
Yeah, that's a good word.
So in the good column, he says Mike Tomlin, Andy Reid. Andy Reid, I think, is probably better than just good, but it may be above the line. Harbaugh, John Harbaugh. I'll give you credit with Harbaugh too. Jason Garrett. I mean, he's really this year. This is maybe 2-3 years ago. They were with DeMarco Murray and that they were okay, but they're lucky they've been patient with him.
But Jason Garrett, to me, he reminds me of a coordinator, and I still feel Jerry Jones is the team. I never realized Garrett is the actual coach there, so that's weird.
Well, that's because Jerry's larger than life, of course. And then Gary Kubiak, another guy who bounced from the Texans and then over to the Broncos, and they have some transition and change too. So incomplete. I'll say Gary Kubiak's incomplete too. He won a Super Bowl, but he just did it with. Did anybody say that? This is interesting. Does anyone ever say Gary Kubiak just won a Super Bowl with John Fox's team? Does anybody say that?
No, I never. No, with Peyton, yes, but not with John Fox's team, no.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's just it's some interesting stuff. So the very good name that I left off here, he says very good after the greats of Belichick, Pete Carroll, Sean Payton. His very next name on the list, very good, Marvin Lewis. And I lost my mind.
I had to watch that twice and think that had to be a mistake. And I didn't know what he was talking about. And the guys at the end, now one was named Sean. I don't know his last name on the program. And then the guy who's actually one of the actual routine announcers that's on there, they both were looking at those guys going, what are you talking about? They go to playoff games, but they don't win playoff games. And then I think what WTF comment he made, I just lost my mind, is when he said, yes, but he look at what he's done with Vontaze Burfict and the player he's made him. I'm like, what? Okay, first of all, Vontaze Burfict has a lot of talent. I'm not going to lie. He does. But this kid has got emotional and mental issues that he implodes his team. And I thought this was a team sport. So bringing out some talent in one player that continues to shoot the team in the foot every single time, and he's the most expensive penalized player in the league, I don't understand why that gives Marvin Lewis this great or good coach title.
It doesn't. And, we're giving Jason Whitlock exactly what he says these things for, and that's attention. We've probably given him more than we should. But I remember when I saw this and I saw his tweet and heard the deal and blah, 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 I asked if there was another Marvin Lewis, maybe from a previous era that I didn't realize was around, like from the 50s or the 40s or something. Maybe he was like, I don't know, with the Bears or the Packers, like the old school NFL or an AFL coach, Baltimore Colts or somebody. Now that would have been, I think Don Shula was the coach there, but I was lost. Are we talking about the same Marvin Lewis? But our bonus question, getting off of Mr. Whitlock and just putting to bed all of this stuff with Mike Tomlin. He's not going anywhere as long as he wants to be here. He was hired as a young coach because they want him to be here for a very long time. So, and I think Mike Tomlin wants to be here for a while too, and he wants to get another ring or two before he calls it quits himself and passes the torch, hopefully to another excellent head coach. But speaking of we got to get back on the WT. Marvin Lewis is a truly worthy WTF, but you didn't want to bring up Don Terry Poe, who is defensive tackle, nose tackle from the Kansas City Chiefs. Mr. Poe, he has to get his suit specially tailored because he is a big boy. He weighs 346 pounds. And he was a very high draft pick. I'm going to pull it up here. I want to say it was 2013. But he is a big boy, and he does things that big boys shouldn't be able to do. And that's called, he runs for touchdowns, and apparently he can throw touchdowns now as well. So if you see this, it was 2012. He was the 11th overall pick in the first round by the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a 2-time Pro Bowler. He was banged up, I think, last year. So this guy is now the heaviest. And I think this is the most polite way to say it, because you're like, oh, that's just mean. And then, you know, let's put it this way. Dontari Poe is not in the NFL because he's 5'10" and weighs 180 pounds and can run like a 4.3 40 or something like that. He's in here to be a bruiser. And they put him in the backfield for this play. And we've seen this. This is reminiscent of, you know, B.J. Raji they had on this graphic. I remember that with Green Bay. And, of course, the refrigerator William Perry with the Bears. This is the real jumbo set. And you get this guy out here, and he's ran in for a touchdown. So this time they kind of have Alex Smith in almost like an offset eye there. And Dontari Poe takes a wildcat snap, takes about 2-3 steps forward, and throws what looks like a rainbow Kareem Abdul-Jabbar skyhook pass for a touchdown. It is the most ridiculous thing you will ever see. You have to see the clip of this. It is just mind-blowing.
Yeah. What? Go ahead. You can say it. What did actually Andy Reid call it?
I don't know. I don't think I heard what Andy Reid called it.
He called it the bloated Tebow pass.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God.
Yes. Go ahead. Get in my face about Tim Tebow once again. Yeah, he called it He goes, yeah, for a bloated Tebow pass. He goes, and everybody laughed, of course, because that's what Timmy does. So you know, it was just funny because he's so light on his feet. He could be a plus size model. It was awesome.
Yeah, and you know what's great about this too? Harris catches this touchdown pass and he celebrates, and they do get penalized. So you'll be happy that the referees were at least consistent. Are you not? How can you not? And then to top this all off, we were just talking about Stephen Hauschka missing the extra point in Seattle. Well, Cairo Santos misses the extra point too. I think they were celebrating that. He busted a gut and just didn't have the intestinal fortitude to put one through the uprights. So
yeah, I think he was just distracted by what was that. And that's the first thing I tweeted out, because I was looking at this and I looked up and I saw this play and I went, what was that? And people are like, you've never seen that before? You love Tebow? I'm like, oh, geez. Okay. Yeah. WTF. What was that anyway? So.
Of course, Antonio Brown throws a much nicer football. So.
Yes.
Terry no longer Terry Tebow Fletcher.
There you go. I'll take that.
We'll put a little hyphen in there, and just let us know when the ceremony is.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, my husband's sitting here shaking his head. So yeah, okay.
Oh, at least he's I don't know, like 2,000 miles away and can't hit me. So for making these comments, a true WTF. Terry, thanks for joining me once again.
Okay.
And folks, that'll do it for the WTF edition. I got tears in my eyes. I think I busted a gut too. So until next time, be safe, be good, and I'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.